it was a very funny set of circumstances too, because when I had finally given up on music, the opportunity came. But I loved the Marine Corps. I loved the military. It was, it probably, if it wasn't for the military, I may not have been able to maintain my position in the Ramones, because I was so out of control with partying and just, didn't care about anything. I really didn't. There was nothing I really cared about at that point. Had I gotten to the Ramones in that frame of mind, I'm sure Johnny would have kicked me out in short order. Our country is suffering from what a lot of countries are suffering from right now, and that's in a two-party system. I think what the world is coming to realize is that the two-party system doesn't work anymore. The two parties, draw the line, and they won't work with each other, and the country suffers, and the people suffer, and the economy suffers, and they don't suffer because they're making money from all the rich people they get contact with, and all the big corporations they get contact with, and it becomes a we call it a stalemate. When things just don't move, there's no way to bargain, there's no way to deal, nobody's willing to give anything up. So at the next election, I'll vote for Ron Paul. He's an independent, he's an outside candidate. A lot of people say he's got no chance to win. That might be, but I'm not the kind of person that can support something that I don't believe in. And like I said, the two-party system in the States is just done. And realistically, anarchy to me always was kind of like a very unrealistic point of view, because it's especially like where I live in the States, there are already huge organized gangs in the States. If there ever was anarchy, if there was no organized government, it would get really ugly really quickly, because all those gangs would just start doing whatever they want to do, and that wouldn't be good for anybody. But now seeing in my lifetime, the political processes that I grew up with kind of fail. I understand why anarchists believe the way they do, because the whole system in America, it seemed like the system that could succeed, where communism and monarchies and all the other types of governments failed. But like those governments, over time, it's kind of been proven that it can't last. It doesn't work. Not in the form it is right now. There might be another way to make it work, but the way it is right now, it ain't gonna. I tried to do the band thing after the Ramones were over, with Los Gusanos and with Bad Chopper, and I've just always had trouble holding on to band members, and it was like a constantly rotating staff of guys that I had playing with me, and I just kind of came to the conclusion that I'd be better off just doing it as CJ Ramone. Besides that, I always wanted to kind of do a tribute record for the Ramones and the fans. And I thought, the best way for me to do that would be as CJ Ramone. It's because the songs are very personal, the lyrics are personal. I wrote all the music. This is the first record where I wrote everything. Since the Ramones retired, all the press and the movies and the books that have come out, there's been so much negative, stuff about their personal lives, and who fucked whose girlfriend, and who was a drug addict, and who used to be a prostitute. Just all negative stuff, and I kind of felt like their legacy was being, ruined by all this stuff. And I thought it was a good opportunity for me to kind of get out and start playing Ramones music and make it, get the focus back on what was important, and that was the Ramones music. Yeah, that's complete what it's linked to. I wanted to take back part of that legacy and take back my name, and that word. I read a lot of history books, and that I read about that the time period, Christian Muslim wars, and that word really stood out to me, and it really fit what I was trying to do. So it's not a political statement that by any stretch of the imagination. It really has to do with my own life and the Ramones, and it just fit real well. When I first decided to do the record, I asked a friend of mine from Argentina to draw that artwork up for me. Gonzalo Fascio, he's been a friend of mine for a long time. He drew it up, and we just kind of sat on it for a while, and then I decided that the album cover was going to be different. I was going to use a photograph, but we wanted to use that artwork. I wanted to do something special for the fans in South America, because they've always been unbelievably loyal, and the shows here are always great. And we came up with the idea of doing a limited edition, 500 copies, with that artwork, only in South America. So that's what we did. I don't really listen to much new music. I listen to the things that affected me when I was a kid. I still do try to pick up on new bands, and I do try to stay open-minded. But I just have trouble relating to a lot of the stuff that's considered punk rock and metal now. It's so derivative of bands that were a couple of generations after the bands that I listened to, that it's too difficult for me to relate to. I came up in a whole different era. I came up in the Cold War era. Political bands were about that. Where even Metallica and bands like that. Punk rock bands were just about anarchy and whatnot. So, then you move a couple of generations down the road where you have Blink-182 and Green Day and the pop punk bands and stuff like that, and those bands were more derivative of the Jam and that type of stuff, the Buzzcocks. So getting beyond that is really difficult for me. It's so many generations down the road that I don't hear the roots of punk rock anymore. I've been working on a book for a couple of years, and I'm hoping to get that finished up and out by 2014. I'd like to do another record next year, another tour next year. There's still some people that I would like to work with, maybe before I retire. I'd like to work with maybe Tom Waits and Mike Ness. I'd like to work from Social Distortion. I'd like to work with. There's a pretty good list of people that that I'd love to get together with at some point, and whether or not I do doesn't really matter. But I'm going to try to get together with as many of them as I can. I probably got another 4 or 5 years of playing punk rock, but beyond that, I don't know. Maybe I'll just start. Maybe I'll just write more books or something. I like writing. I've found that I'm pretty good at it, so I wouldn't mind doing that. She's a little lost girl in her own little world. She looks so the book's about, I guess it's kind of reflective on most of my life, all the way up to the end of the Ramones. So there's, originally I started out wanting to just write my years with the Ramones, but then I realized that there's some things in there, some things that I say and I do, that if you don't know about my history, about my past, you would think that I was lying or that I was out of my mind. But I figured if people understand where I'm from and my own experiences before I was in the band, they'll understand it better. So I just took it back to the beginning and started it out that way. It's just gives the book a little bit more, flows a little bit better. You understand more rather than just, like I said, some of the stuff I'd say, you'd be like, that can't be. There's no way. That sounds like bullshit. She don't talk to me.
Don't talk to me.
Yeah. This, I've had people go, "Come on, are you serious? Did it really happen that way? Like how I got into the band, And I tell them, yeah, I mean, it's all documented. It's all easily proved. I have, being in the Marine Corps, my discharge papers, the dates. I have everything documented, and any of the stories in the book that I put down, can be backed up by, people that were there and stuff. So, I believe me, I fact check everything that I write. Right after I write it, I go back and double check the dates, and I make sure I have it all right, because I know, you release a book, you're really when you put your life in a book and you put it out there for scrutiny. And these days, there's people that just make a living ripping people apart, So I'm going to make sure before I put the book out that I fact check as much as I possibly can. And there's always slip ups, and you get a date wrong, and people go, oh, well, it didn't really happen that way. But, I'm giving my version of it, the facts, I'll make sure I get them right. But everything is subjective. I tell a story. It's already happened. I've told a story and said, yeah, this happened, that happened. I think somebody from the Ramones organization said in an interview, CJ was never even friends with Dee Dee. He barely knew Dee Dee and blah, 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 and this and that. But, I was friends with Dee Dee for years. I played in a band with them, but their version of it is they knew Dee Dee longer than I did, so they felt like they were better friends. So who was I to talk about Dee Dee or tell a story about Dee Dee? But, they asked me to speak at Dee Dee's funeral. They didn't ask Mark to speak. They didn't ask Johnny to speak. They asked me to speak at Dee Dee's funeral, because I was friends with Dee Dee for years. I was friends with his wife, so... There's always two sides to a story, but I try to be as honest as I can. I try not to overplay my role in the Ramones. I don't say that I saved the band, or I made their career, or, Johnny and Joey, I was their best friend, and, I don't say any of that. I try to be as honest as I can, and that's, that's how I feel like, that's the best way for me to tell a story.
I don't want to grow up.